I'm very excited for our next presenter. I'm going to tell you guys a quick story about how I found Mike Ferry and how it completely changed my life, my family's life, my business partner's life. It's been one of the most instrumental components to our success. And I'm going to tell this story, sorry, Mike, just to buy some time for people to jump back on. I was about 19 years old, and I was selling phones at T-Mobile. I had just gotten my license, and I sold my manager at the T-Mobile store her first house, and I made like 14 grand. And I was the richest man in Babylon. I was like, holy smokes, I am rich. So I called my friend, who's a real estate agent and had some success. And I said, I'm like, hey, bro, I have all this money now. Let's go do commercials, billboards, bus benches. Let's do it all, and let's grow a big business together. And he laughed at me, and he said, Sam, save your money and come listen to this guy, Mike Ferry, at this event called Superstar Retreat in Vegas. And that was my first time as a young guy being exposed to just that sort of experience, seeing Mike on stage and seeing how he thought so big and the life that he's created for himself, but also all these great agents. I mean, there was people on stage doing 100 deals a year, making, $1 million bucks. I'm like, oh my gosh, someone can make $1 million doing this. And there's people that coach with him that make millions and millions. Some of them made 50 million plus in their careers working with Mike. So anyways, I go to Superstar Retreat, and I, at the time, had like $7 grand in the bank account. I had blown through, half of my riches from selling my first house. And I go up to one of his coaching clients, Brady Sundall, and I say to him, I'm like, hey, Brady, I have $7 grand left. I want to sign up for coaching. I don't know if I can afford it. I don't know if I should do it. And if you know Brady, he's just like the sweetest, most like authentic guy. And he said, Sam, I wouldn't think twice because it's like gravity. It just works. And if you do it, you cannot help but to become more successful. And we did it. And, for the first year, we were learning the systems. We were brand new. But after several years, we started working directly with Mike Ferry on the brokerage side of things. And when we met him, I think we were at 200 agents and now, close to 1,200. And he's just been instrumental for all of us. If you're not familiar with him, you've probably been under the rock. But Mike Ferry, the legend himself, how are you doing today?
Couldn't be better, and thank you for that. I had not heard that story before, Sam. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was one of those life-changing events. And I remember just being in the room. I was kind of dressed like a slob, not knowing whose event I was going to. And I was sitting next to one of your coaches, and I'm like, I'm going to sign up for coaching. He said, we're not going to succeed dressed like that. I was like, damn. But it was awesome, and it really transformed the way I looked at things. I don't even know if I told you this, Mike, but when Oliver and I first started with your company, we were just working out of my condo. And that was our real estate office. We would both come to my house. I would wake up, put a suit and tie on, walk out of my master bedroom and go into the extra bedroom where we had our prospecting station. And we would be suit and tied up in the condo, just prospecting and running the business. So thank you for everything you've done for us. I know the group is excited to have you. We have about 75 people between the two different places we're broadcasting. So hopefully the rest of the people will find their way back on. But welcome to the Broker Owner Challenge.
Thank you, Sam. And I want to, first of all, I think everybody understands what Sam has done with his partners in the company over the last 4 or 5 years. It's been exciting to watch, and in my case, to have a little bit of participation in that growth. I always tell everybody the same thing. They're always very kind, like Sam just was, to say thank you for what we've assisted in. But the truth is, I had the easy part. I just get to share ideas, and you folks, Sam, did the hard part. You did the work, and that's really what it comes down to. The biggest challenge that every broker, owner, manager faces today is the lack of communication between agents and management because of the pandemic. And when the pandemic took place, it caught all of us obviously by surprise. I think most of us, and starting with myself, were naive enough to believe that it might last 30, 60 days. And here we are now just coming up on 1 year. And of course, there has been a lot of relief worldwide, and the vaccine makes a difference, and people are being a lot smarter in how they work. But the problem in our business today is the lack of communication. And it's a huge problem because, as we all are aware, the gap between those that are selling and listing real estate and those that are not is widening by the day. I see all these reports that come out. I saw a report from a huge independent company in the Southeast that they said that, and they're big. I mean, this is several thousand agents in this company. And they said that 85 to 87% of all the new licensees are failing within 6 months within their organization. And I don't think that's a problem that they have created. I think it's a problem the industry has. So the communication is the hard part. And I know everybody's working remote. Sam, you're working remote. I'm in the office because here in Las Vegas, we're fortunate to be pretty much wide open. The casinos, the hotels. The only thing we're missing is the shows. And our famous Las Vegas Raiders had no people in the stadium this year. But we're lucky that we're in a state that is pretty much wide open. So we're lucky to be able to work in the office. Our staff is all here and everybody has been healthy so far. But I understand that in the brokerage business with independent contractors who are exercising more of that behavior now than they ever have in my career. So I'll just quickly say to everybody, Sam, I started in real estate when I was 18 in Huntington Beach, California, working for an escrow company. Then I went to work for a title company. Then I went into real estate, and then I bought the company I was working for. And then when I turned 30, I started doing this work I'm doing today. So I've been in real estate. I'm turning 76 in a couple of months. So I don't have any other career, okay, besides talking to and working with brokers, owners, and managers and agents. So I'm going to ask Sam if I may give my email address, because I'm going to suggest if anybody wants to take notes, of course, please do. If you send me an email when we're done today, I'll send a copy of all my notes that I'm going to cover, and I'm never going to cover all the notes I have because I've never finished a seminar yet, and I've only done 7,500 of them. So my email address, very simple, mike.ferry at mikefferry.com.
I'll put that in the chat as well.
Thank you. So I'll gladly send Sam the notes to all of your guests. And I have to say again, when Sam called me on this, I had a little question mark. And Sam knows that I question a lot of what his thoughts are and a lot of what he does. And I said, Sam, you're never going to get 75 to 100 brokers from all over the country to show up. And I think yesterday you had 90 out of 100 show up, and today you have 75 plus. So hats off to you and your team. Okay, if I look at the job of a broker manager, I'm going to ask everybody to think about this. The number one job, I believe, in real estate today, if you accept the leadership role, the way I think a leadership role should be accepted, is retention. And I made a note. I said, keeping those that have value to your company or can be trained to bring value and be productive. That's retention. It's the hardest part of the job. And it's not because of disruptors. I get so tired of the stupid word disruptors. Watch, this industry is changing every day. Some for the good, some for the bad, some for the positive, some for the negative. 10 years ago, Sam, companies like yours were pretty much non-existent. Okay, now what I call a pay-for-play company is more common than a traditional company in most cases. So, keeping people that have value is the hardest job a real estate broker faces. And even when you're paying them 100%, somebody else pays them 102 through a marketing budget, through some type of other vehicle. So number one is retention. Second job, of course, is recruiting. And that is a never ending. And I will say to all of your friends that are on this call today, Sam, that recruiting solves every single production problem a real estate brokerage could face. So therefore, we say to agents today, your number one job is to take listings because the inventory. Now, we're going to do over 5 million transactions this year in the U.S., according to all the projections, like we did last year. Last year, the inventory was record low. This year, it's record low. But half the transactions are listings sold. So somebody is taking listings every day. Well, as a broker, owner, manager, taking listings is the same as recruiting. If you're not prospecting every day, we have a young lady that Sam has met in Los Angeles County that I coach. She makes 5 contacts a day, 5 days a week to agents in a specific category of production. And last year she added 25 agents to her sales team. Her goal this year is to add 35. Her production is growing, and it's only because she makes 5 contacts a day. I always get a kick, Sam, and you and I have some fun conversations. When a broker says, I don't have time to talk to 5 people. What in the world are you doing all day long? Okay. So the third job, I believe, or responsibility is the training. And that's a never-ending, nonstop job. Folks, we are the most overtrained industry in the world, and yet we're the most underperforming. So what does that tell me? The training isn't very good. Now, yes, everybody has to be on social media. Everybody has to be on their computers all day long. How about if everybody just talked to 4 or 5 people a day about something? Because as Sam, I don't know if they all know, that's what you and your team have done for years in recruiting.
Yep.
It's offering good, solid sales training. Guys and gals, I've done 7,500 seminars. Last year, 2020, from March 15th through the end of the year, I did 550 30 to 45-minute webinars for our customers. 99% of the agents we recruit have no sales background. If we don't train them, you might as well just forget them the day they start. The fourth responsibility is accountability, holding them accountable to what they say they're going to do. It's not a fun act. It's not an anger act. It's not I'm after somebody because they didn't do their job. Accountability is just asking them questions as, okay, so Sam, you said to me last week that you were going to do X, and you didn't do it, did you?
No, I didn't.
Then I'm going to say, well, could you explain to me why? What came up? What got in the way? What were the distractions? Or did you just choose not to do it? The next responsibility, and we're going to spend some time on it in a minute, is per person productivity. I think the answer to almost any and all recruiting is per person productivity. When you can show an agent the value of coming to your company because the average agent does X. I got a call from a company in the Southeast a couple of months ago. They wanted me to do a webinar for them. And you know, I don't charge a lot of money for those kind of things because they're second nature to me. So I said to the guy, all right, I'm going to charge you $4,000 for an hour. He said, okay. I said, how many agents do you have? He said, I have 300. I said, good for you. How many offices? 1. I said, great. How many deals did you do last year? 400. 300 agents? I said, you know what? It's not worth your time. It's not worth the money you're spending. It's not worth my time. I don't want to talk to a company that does 1 transaction per year per person. That's not a real estate company. That's a mistake. It's a mistake. And of course, Sam, some of the brokers listening may get mad because of my flippant attitude, but I've only been flippant for 45 years speaking, so it's part of my attitude. The next is, of course, responsibility is coaching. Everybody claims they have the best coaching company in the world. I was the first real estate coaching company in October of 1988 is when I started the real estate coaching. Alan Dalton, who is a close friend of mine, has been for many years. Many of you know Alan, said to me, I gave birth to an industry, okay? It's called coaching. Well, coaching is doing all of what we've talked about so far, but doing it on an individual basis instead of a group basis. There's no such thing as group coaching. It is impossible. It doesn't work. When you have a group, it's called training. When you're working one-on-one, it's called coaching. And then the next responsibility is planning, and that's keeping yourself and your company ahead of the curve because it's the biggest job in real estate. And that's why I say everybody says that technology is disrupting real estate. Folks, technology changes every day. Last Saturday, I played golf with a fellow at my club here in Las Vegas. He was a brand new member. I said, what kind of work do you do? He said, I own a small technology company here in Las Vegas. I said, good for you. How long have you had it? 35 years. I said, how do you keep up? He said, Mike, I have a team of people that are really sharp. Technology changes every hour. So So, and Sam, you're pretty strong in technology. Wouldn't you agree?
I think so. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I compliment you on that all the time because I am just the opposite of strong when it comes to technology, but I have a good team that understands it. This guy said he can't keep up. So planning is trying to keep up with the curve of what's going on in your community, your town, the market stats, market conditions, who's changing, who's buying who's merging, which companies are losing agents left and right, and are you part of the absorption of those agents? And then, of course, the last on this list is profitability. So, and profitability is always going to be designed by you and your CFO and your outside accounting. We know that a profitability is the purpose of a business, and I would wish you the best on that. So, I did some work 15, 16 years ago. I got hired by a company in the Northeast. It's a good company. They had at that time 6 offices and about 120 agents. Their per person productivity at that time, I think it was 3.5 transactions per person. I met with the president, who is the minor partner. The 2 other senior partners were not really involved in the company. They let the president run the real estate firm. I said, what do you want to accomplish? And they said, our production is not what they want it to be. I said, how much freedom do you give the president to make decisions? We're going to give him the freedom. I said, are you willing to invest in your management team, your president, and your agents to make it happen? And of course, their natural answer was, how much is it going to cost? I said, well, let's say it's going to cost you $50,000 a year. And the 2 fellows that owned the company primarily had a lot of money, and they said, fine, what's the plan? So 4 years later, we went from 6 offices, 100 people, 20 offices, 650 people, and we took the per person productivity from 3.5 to 4 to 19 plus transactions per person for 150 agents. So I'm going to say to all of you kindly, if you don't believe you can do it, you're right. Because one thing I'm real sure on, anytime you say to yourself, I can't do it, you're 100% correct. We've done this time and time and time again. Now, yes, we know when you get to the size of, say, in your case, Mike's company, I caught the end of his presentation. I appreciated all the things he said. And of course, the size of Sam's company, moving per person productivity is a huge job. But if you move it up 1 transaction per person, and you got 500 agents, you've added 500 transactions to your company. In Sam's case, I mean, let's face it, with the way the real estate industry operates today with affiliate services, mortgage, title, escrow, et cetera, and you move the per person productivity up 1 transaction, and in Sam's case, 1,200 transactions, that's monumental. And that drops to the bottom line on the affiliate services. So, I will tell you what I did with that group very quickly. I coached the president of the company for 5 straight years as I've been working with Sam. Probably about 8 or 9 years now, Sam, I would guess.
Yeah, close to that.
Yeah. Second, we put the entire management team in a group training call once a week. They wanted to call it coaching. It was training. Third, we did 2 one-day seminars each year live for that company. And they were a big hit because as the company grew, the attendance grew with it. Fourth, all the management team attended our annual management retreat. And we'll invite Sam, your group, to attend in May of this year. We also had 150 people every year from the Northeast either go to Florida or Las Vegas for our annual Superstar Retreat. And we carried about 75 to 80 of their agents in our coaching at all the time. So everybody put an effort in. The reward, I don't know, what is 20 times 650? 14,000 transactions. That's a lot of deals, okay?
That'll pay some bills.
Oh, it was, and they were in the mortgage business heavily, so they capitalized. So I'm going to spend a few minutes, Sam. I know we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to give some thoughts on per person productivity. Some of your people will smile and say that makes sense. Some will say, why do you have Mike Ferry on the event? And either one's okay, okay? One thing I'm very clear on, I only really please about 10% of an audience. because we're so involved in all the magic formulas, magic pills, magic wands, shiny pennies in our industry today. And I will say to all of you, because I love Sam dearly, I respect him a lot, and I consider him a great broker and a friend. One of my biggest challenges with Sam is trying to keep him away from the shiny pennies, okay? And what he does best is recruit, retain, coach salespeople all the time. So if you agree, I'm thrilled. And if you don't agree, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity. So here's the first thought I wrote down. We have to make a personal commitment to the process of increasing per person productivity. And that's the hard part. We have to make a personal commitment, which starts with, we take the total number of agents, part-time and full-time, got to include the part-timers, because a lot of your full-time or part-time, nobody told them. So that's just part of the process. Okay, so we take the total number of licenses you have. Now, don't include assistants that are licensed, of course. And then you take your total number of transactions, closed, units, sides, whatever you call them, for 2020 and divide one into the other, and we have the PPP. So let's say that you're operating at 5 or 7, okay, or maybe even really good at 8 or 9, which is really good per person productivity. Are you committed to do whatever it takes physically, mentally, and emotionally to increase that by any place from 1/2 to 1 transactions in the next 12 months? Because it's the commitment, okay? I had an interview a couple of weeks ago. I had a little online newspaper from the East Coast call, and the gal said, I have to tell you that my editor asked me to interview you. I said, great, I'm hope I can help. And she said, but I have to admit to you up front, I've never heard of you before. I said, well, we're even, because I hadn't heard of you. So she didn't think that was very funny. She said, what is the number one thing a broker has to do today to succeed? I said, commit. Commit. You got to commit. But then second, you have to participate, because participation is an extended level of the commitment you make to your agents. So I guess the best way to summarize per person productivity is, what is the level of commitment you're willing to make? Because see, I have said for many, many years, and Sam has heard me say it, I am committed to helping a broker increase per person productivity and helping the agents do a better job of listing and selling homes. I've been doing this full time for 45, actually almost now 46 years, okay? And whether you agree or disagree, it works, but it only works when the broker manager works. The second thought that I wrote down, you have to understand that not everybody on your staff, team, agents is going to be excited about your commitment. Accept that. I mean, we started with this company in the Northeast with about 12-15% of the agents participating. Even the last couple of years, we went for 6.5 years before the partnership broke up, which was unfortunate. 2 of the partners moved away. The company pretty much collapsed. I mean, they're still doing, I think today they're doing about 4,000 transactions a year, which is still very, very strong business. But you see, we never had more than 50% of the agents that ever really got behind the message that we were teaching. So don't expect full participation. When you announce to agents, my goal is to help every one of you do a little bit more than you've done. Don't expect them to all go, gosh, what a relief. I'm so excited. Because Sam, you know, even with 1,200 agents, trying to get all of them behind you.
A lot of work.
I mean, oh, yeah. Let's put it this way. Sam, you're what now, 34, 35?
38.
38. And what you guys and gals don't know, that Sam has to dye his hair black because it turned gray about 2 years ago. Okay, because
I'm actually going to dye up the sides right after this. That's a true story.
because the commitment and the participation, even though we keep working to increase it, is never the same. The next thing I wrote down is you have to understand in per person productivity, what are the highest forms of motivation that you can offer? Because, you know, the word motivation, I believe, stands for motive to action. There has to be a goal. There has to be action. And the 2 is the process of getting it, okay? Motivation is the name of the game. It has to be internal but most motivate. If you look at like a Tony Robbins, who's a great speaker, you look at my son Tom Ferry, who's a great speaker, you look at Brian Tracy, great speaker, look at some of the older fellows that are gone, Cavett Roberts, Zig Ziglar, etc. They were considered to be motivational speakers. But the truth is, they will all say the same thing. If it's not internal, it's going to be superficial. But Earl Nightingale, who was my mentor, I worked for Earl for 4 years, as Sam knows, in Chicago back in the late 60s. Earl said the number one motivator of all people is recognition. Recognizing people for something. Even if you have to search to find out what it is you're going to recognize them for, you know, that attaboy, that tap on the shoulder, that wink, that, you know, that thumbs up means the world to the majority of people. The problem we have today is most of our communication is by email, text, Zoom, etc. So giving that recognition to the degree you want. We have a broker in the Keys that you have met, Sam. Okay, his name is Brian Schmidt. Some of you may be in that south part of the country. He has the highest level of retention that I've ever seen. I've worked with this company for 25 years. We coach him every week for 25 years, okay? His company, you're going to love this. Nobody ever leaves his company. I think he lost one agent the last 3 years.
Amazing.
He has 230 agents in 4 offices. They average better than 10 and a half transactions per person. But his maximum commission split for everybody is 70%. But he gives them so much recognition. For example, yes, they get the birthday card, the anniversary card, the Christmas card, Thanksgiving card, the Easter card, whatever their religious preference card is, hand writes them all the time. He sends a card to the agent's spouse, happy birthday, happy anniversary. He writes them personally. Every single listing the company takes, he writes a handwritten note to the agent and to the seller saying thank you. Every single check that is sent to an agent for the closing, he writes a handwritten note, says thank you. Brian is convinced that Earl Nightingale and Mike Ferry are right. Recognition creates retention. But the second motivator today is security, creating a sense of security. And how's that done? Training, coaching, and communication. But the third motivator per Earl Nightingale, Sam, and I know this is going to sound funny, is money. But why do agents all want you and I to pay them more money? Because we don't give them any recognition. See, it's really not complicated. If we're giving people a lot of recognition, they're going to feel good about what they do. I grew up in the Disney operation. My kid's mom was one of the original Musketeers. And I worked at Disney all during high school, my first part of college. And, you know, when you work in an operation like that, everybody in that organization, including Walt, you had to call them by their first name. And, you know, here I was 16 years old and Walt Disney sitting in the park every day because he sat on Main Street in disguise doing what he called market research. And for those of us that knew him, we'd walk by him. I was a street sweeper. And if you said, good morning, Mr. Disney, you were fired. Period. That was it. But if you said, good morning, Walt, he would acknowledge and smile back. Nobody is too important to be recognized. And Walt Disney was the classic example. The next thought I wrote down, and I guess this is something that is not as common today because we're working so remotely, is to look for what I call productivity stoppers in the office. Productivity stoppers. Is it a policy? Is it a procedure? Is it somebody in the office that is negative, nasty, hostile, angry, doesn't follow direction? Well, Sam, here's a way to look at it. Is there anybody on your roster that probably should be terminated?
Yes.
More than one?
Yes.
And of course, we all hate to admit it, you know, because we hate to have people that are holding us hostage, and that's what happens so often in a productivity stopper. But, you know, when you have 1,200, it's pretty hard to just identify 2 or 3. So I appreciate your smile. But I also know that if there are people in your company that should be fired and we're not firing them, aren't we in essence sanctioning incompetence within our own company?
Yes.
Because, you know, Sam, you have a couple beautiful children. You don't let your oldest child slap the heck out of your youngest child.
No.
You just don't allow that. You don't allow your kids to run into the street without looking both ways. You don't allow that, okay? And if a parent allows that, that would be called incompetence. Or how about this? NAR says that 50% of the agents last year did not do a deal. 50%. There's 1.4 million active licenses in NAR, which is why, don't be offended, I refer to NAR as non-active realtors because technically that's what it is, okay? Now, granted, I understand that NAR is a political organization. They need members. They need to pay dues. That's how they grow, and I understand all that. But at the same time, if the people are not competent to do the job, why would you have them on the staff? Especially if they communicate with other members of your staff. So that would be a productivity stopper. The next little challenge that I'm going to present to you on per-person productivity, I'd ask each of you, if you're going to consider anything that I'm talking about at all, I'm going to ask you to consider just taking your pen and paper and start writing down, what are some of the problems that you think you're going to face in making this happen? Because there's, so Sam, if I said to you right now, what would you say outside of the communication and participation, because we're also remote, what would you say would be the biggest challenge or problem taking your company up one transaction per person? Just give us an example what you would come up with.
What would I do to increase production, or what would the challenge be?
What would the challenge be?
Well, first thing that comes is participation. Outside of that, I would say the biggest challenge is time, bandwidth, being able to be in front of as many people as possible. One of the questions that actually already came up on the other side is how to structure and schedule coaching when you have more than 15, 20 agents.
Okay, good. So let's address that. Okay, because that I agree with Sam. The bandwidth, if there were 12 of you as partners and each were dealing with 100 agents, it would certainly be easier than 2 of you as partners dealing with 1,200 agents and all of the complexities that go with that. Mortgage, escrow, title, administration, legal issues, communications, getting contracts approved and signed, keeping your broker online. And it's a huge job. It's a huge payoff when it works, as you guys know. So what I always say to brokers that are interested in coaching, first of all, you have to study what coaching is. So I'm going to suggest to anybody, almost every year, somebody that wins the World Series or wins the NFL championship like Tampa Bay last year, somebody will talk about how they coach, okay? And there's been several written. Stranahan from Denver wrote a wonderful book on coaching. Don Shula, before he had passed away, had written several articles you can find on coaching. You have to learn how to coach. I started the coaching industry. I started it by mistake, okay? I was doing a seminar in San Francisco at the Fairmont Hotel. We had 400 agents for 3 days in an event. And Sam, you've seen this. They were staring at me like I had 7 heads. It was, I had never got such a unusual response. At the end of the second day, at 4 o'clock, I said to the group, I got a great idea. I want every one of you to write me a check for $5,000 and have it sitting up here for me tomorrow when I start the seminar. And in return, I'll call you once a week and I'll share with you exactly what you need to do to increase your production dramatically. We'll talk 15 to 20 minutes. And I walked off the stage. Well, the next morning I walk in, there were 300 business cards on the stage. I said, what is this stack of cards? These are the people that want you to call them once a week. Well, 100 of them signed up times $5,000. Let's put it this way. It was a nice day at the Mike Ferry organization.
Yep.
But then I had to figure out, how do I call 100 people once a week for 15 minutes and share ideas, which is what I did for 6 months. You have to learn how to coach. You have to learn how to ask questions. So I'm going to recommend this to everybody. I don't know how many agents each of you have. but I'll bet you have 10 to 15 that are loyal to who you are and what your company stands for. Bring them individually aside, in this case by Zoom or by telephone or by whatever method you use, and say to them, I would be interested in helping you go to the next level. How about if we talk once a week, 15 to 20 minutes at a scheduled time? You tell me what your goals are. I'll share with you the steps necessary to make it happen. Don't try to take on the whole company. Take 15 to 20 that are loyal to you and tell them you're going to make a 6-month commitment to these agents to help them increase their production. But then the biggest job is our showing up, because we have, once we make that commitment, back to the first point, Sam, then the whole program changes. But then after 6 months, maybe you take on 5 more, or maybe you get an assistant manager to coach 15, or you hire a coach. Let us train the coach how to coach. We do that for a living, okay? But don't try to take on the whole company. I think, Sam, you had a question or a comment.
A question came through, which is when they say that they want the coaching and then they don't participate, don't show up, but they're good agents, how do you hold these people accountable, or what do you do?
That's, of course, normal.
Yeah, that's probably the second biggest challenge for us is they want it, but they don't want to do it.
So here's what's interesting. You know, we charge $1,000 a month for our premier coaching. Sam's been paying that for 8 or 10 years, or maybe longer now. And we're forever thankful. So thank you again, Sam. Even when they pay $1,000 a month, Sam, you know how busy you are, how hard it is to always be there every week for your coaching call. Now, Sam is going to be busier as the owners are than an agent that's doing 12 deals a year. But creative avoidance behavior is what they become masters of. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. I'm in my car driving to an appointment. Can you call me later? Or it goes to voicemail saying, I'm sorry I missed you. Call me back. Or they just don't show up. Or they send you a text 5 minutes before. We have several thousand people at all times in our coaching. 10% of them never show up on a weekly basis. And they're paying a lot of money. So it's human behavior. But the accountability is, how are you going to follow up? If they don't show up, are you going to leave a message, which I've had to do with Sam over the years? Send them a text, send them an email, okay? Call them after hours, okay? Buy a burner phone so they don't recognize your number when you call, because that's the accountability part. And then it's just a simple question. Sam, we had a 2 o'clock appointment scheduled. Something came up. Could you tell me what it was? Well, I had a last minute call from a potential buyer. Great. Did the buyer buy? Well, no. Do you think it might have been better to delay the appointment, because most buyers don't buy because of the lack of inventory, and be better off being on the coaching call next week? What do you think? And they're going to say yes. So the accountability, remember, is asking questions. It's not being upset. Yes, you're upset, okay? I'm very, very lucky. I coach 16 people. I coach 3 agents that are mega agents in production. Bernie Gallerini and his team last year did 706 closed transactions. He grossed $7.2 million as an agent. Okay. And here's the good news. Nobody knows who he is, because he's not looking for the public to recognize him on Facebook. Okay. John Ames up in a little tiny town. I call it St. George, Fort George, and oh my God, it's George, Utah. Okay. 90 miles north of Vegas. I think they did about 500 transactions. Jeff Highland down in Prescott, Arizona, I think they're close to about 300. He has 3 buyers agents, or 320. But all the rest of the people I get to coach are good brokers, okay, which is, for me, the fun part of what we do. But the accountability is the challenge for all the brokers. So it's a tough one, okay? So list the problems you have and be open to suggestions from your peers, your people in your mastermind group, you know, your friends like Sam and different people you know. Be open to the suggestions they give you if you want to solve the problems on per person productivity. The next point is the one we've been working on for about 18 months with all of our clients, because although my wife Sabrina and I did not know the pandemic was going to be the way it was, we have a company in Europe, which we've operated for 10 years, and we have a company in Russia. So we spend about 3 months a year overseas. This pandemic started in Italy back in October of last year. And that's when it came to light for us. We didn't talk about it because we hadn't experienced it yet. So I want to say to you what we've been telling agents today. Because of the home isolation and because even when offices are open, most agents are not comfortable showing up. You have to increase per person productivity by getting them to commit to working their database. They have to expand their database, communicate with their data. Here's what I said: March, April, May, June, July, and August. Anybody you call is going to answer their phone because they've been sitting in their house for 3, 4, 5 months with nobody to talk to. And the people I felt the worst for were the single men and women in real estate, living in a condo or apartment or a home, and virtually nobody to talk to besides the wall or their dog. So when somebody called, our contact ratio of my sales force went up 500% because
Wow.
agents would actually answer the phone. Okay, so we could assist them in going to a seminar, being involved in coaching. They have to work their database. They have to purge it first to get rid of the dead beats in their database. They have to set up a plan for adding to their database because people that like, love, trust, know, have a relationship are going to give your agents business. And most of your agents, I hate to even say this out loud, do not work their database, or they only work their database. And both of those are a challenge. So we're very strong, especially since January of this past year, 2020. And our agents' productivity is skyrocketing because they work their database, okay? The next point I want to bring up, and I know it's 10:45 now, so we're a little limited on time. And again, Sam, if there's questions, tell them to type in the chat box. And again, if they want a copy, I'm going to send them about 20 points. We're only going to cover about half of them. I'll send them all to anybody that requests them. We won't be promoting anything. We're not going to ask you to buy anything. We're just going to send you the points. However, I will say to you, anybody that says I have an interest in coaching, you're going to hear from me because I'm a sales guy number 1, sales guy number 2, sales guy number 3, sales guy number 4, and then when nothing else works, I'm a sales guy. So, if you do have an interest in what we do, just make a note of that and I'll give you a call. We can talk. But the next point is probably one of the most challenging, and that is to consider raising any standards you have in the office to a higher level. And standards encompass everything, okay? So when you're hiring an agent, I think there should be standards presented as to who we stand for and what we do. See, like in my company in Las Vegas, we interview a potential salesperson. Technically, they're telemarketers, okay? And that's really what most salespeople do today. They are either on the phone calling and or they're pre-qualifying or making a presentation. Interesting thought, Sam. I don't think I shared this with you. We did a survey of about 75 of our top agents for 2020. Less than about 1.5% of their listing presentations were virtual. They did them all live. The sellers, in most cases, the sellers insisted. So, they had gloves, they had a mask, they had sanitizer. They asked the seller open all the windows as long as weather permitted. They sat 6 feet apart. They sent out the pre-listing package. They went through all the protocols. But I was surprised. I really thought more agents were doing virtual until I realized, and you know this because you do a lot of good virtual stuff, how difficult it is to do a virtual presentation and keep somebody's interest. Hi, how are you? I'm so glad you're here. My name is Mike, and I'm the trainer. Slap yourself on the head and turn your virtual off. Learn how to do it. But here's the challenge. If somebody comes in and applies for a job, we make it very clear. You make 100 outbound calls per day, 5 days a week. And every day we monitor how many calls you've made. We monitor how many contacts you have. We monitor how many presentations you make, and we monitor how many sales you make. So right off the bat, in the first 3 minutes of a recruiting presentation, 50% say, I'm not interested in leaving. And I'm okay with that because that's the standard that we have. I did some work for one of the national companies out of Canada, and they assigned me to do my first program with a Vancouver manager, an ex-police officer for 15 years. Then prior to that, 4 years in the military, very strong, very tough. I said, have you ever considered setting minimum standards? He said, Mike, I'll go a step further. I said, tell me about it. His name was Bill. He said, I show them a list of what I'm going to do for them, what the standards are. Then I show them a list of what I expect from them. And then we both sign it. It's a contract, and I give them a copy. So if they're not doing what they say, or I'm not doing what I say, I've given them permission to say, hey, what's going on, Bill? But I'm permission to do the same. But listen to this catch. Then on that agreement, they had to stay for 1 year before they could leave. And if they left within the first year, they owed him $10,000 for the training.
Ooh.
Guess what his turnover was? And guess what? There were 400 offices. He had the highest per person production of the entire company and the highest net profit.
Wow.
Now, I know that most brokers are never going to take that approach, but what are the standards? Do you have standards of any type? Or is it just, well, whatever they do, and whatever they don't, okay? So the next thought, and then I think we should open it up for Q&A, Sam. We need to also, as owners and managers, sharpen our sales skills. Because the truth is, retention is a sales skill. Recruiting is a sales skill. Coaching is a sales skill, okay? Obviously, per person productivity increase is a sales skill. If you know, I get so tired of, up until last year, we were doing a live management retreat every year. Sam has always been with us every year. We have usually 300 to 500 brokers attend for a couple of days. And
great event, by the way. If you guys have the opportunity to go to the next one in, I think, May, instrumental. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, no. Thank you. And it's virtual. It'll be virtual in May. I will tell you that right off the bat. So instead of all day, it's 3 hours on a Monday and 3 hours on a Tuesday. And we take a 10-minute break every hour because it's all virtual. But here's what I've always said to brokers. If you are not enthusiastic, if you are not energized about the work you do, if you're not an inspiring person, how do you expect to be a great salesperson? And I know that many days we're not feeling like we are as energetic, enthusiastic, inspiring. In fact, Sam, you were in the meeting a couple of years ago in Huntington Beach, and there's a guy sitting in row 3 on the aisle. And I can picture this guy like he's sitting today, and he's sitting like this with his head down and not taking notes. And I was just on the point about inspiring people. And I pointed at the guy and said, how in the world do you expect to inspire anybody with that behavior pattern you're exhibiting?
I remember that.
It's really hard for me. I said, hire to do it. Okay?
Ooh, that's great.
It's a tough one. So start working on your personal sales skills because it'll make you a better recruiter, better retention, better coaching, better accountability. So Sam and I agreed yesterday that we'd take the last few minutes and open it up to any questions or comments or concerns. And I know they've had 2 strong days, Sam. I hope that they're all paying close attention to what you're doing. And by the way, it's mike.ferry@mikeferry.com. And if you have an interest in our coaching, just say, Mike, call me. And let's talk about all the different things we do, because we have some things we do that are very inexpensive financially for a broker to invest in that can get you high returns. So any questions?
Yeah, we have a few questions. I have questions coming in 2 different areas. So we'll go here first. Mike, do you have a how to coach training?
Yes.
How to be a good coach?
Yes. We have 2 of our coaches, and it's just a little 6-month commitment where you talk to our coach once a week for 6 months on how to become a great coach. Okay. And it's something that, remember, it's a learned process. It's like thinking big is a learned process. And I see the question, is that on the site? No, it's never been advertised except like this. So send me a note and I'll get information to that person that said, is it on the site?
Awesome. Thank you for that. Another question on the Zoom is, Mr. Ferry, how does Premier Coaching work? What are 40 intensity calls per year? How is the coach selected for you, and do you coach it yourself?
Okay, obviously a multiple question.
Yes.
These are all people that have been working within the Mike Ferry, sales system for a minimum of 5 years, and in most cases 10 years. The key to coaching is the system that you coach. So if you don't have a defined system that you're offering, what do you coach on? And then it's all hype, motivation, stories. How are you? How do you feel? We're not psychiatrists. We're not marriage counselors. We're professional business coaches and sales coaches. So I select all the coaches. We train all the coaches 3 times a year. Plus, all the coaches are on a weekly coaching and training call with my staff. So and if coach is not providing the services, adios. So, in January, we terminated 5 coaches out of I think we have 90 or 92 coaches. A pro football team, okay, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think there's 53 players on the squad. Every Monday, every team fires 5 players. And on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they bring in 5 new ones. Okay, I follow the policy of the pro football teams because they have a great coaching system. I don't know I can't remember what the 4th question was.
What does 40 intensity calls a year mean?
It means we are asking you what you're trying to accomplish, and then we have calls on each of those topics trying to make sure that you can accomplish what you say. So if Sam says to me, I'm trying to add in the next 12 months 100 salespeople to my total team. We're going to take as many calls working on that recruiting side as necessary, because we have an entire recruiting coaching program also, just on the recruiting process. And Sam was kind of fun. Sam said to me originally, could you talk for an hour on recruiting? I said, no, I don't teach that program. I have 2 coaches for that. That's not what I do. I do per person productivity. So the 40 intense calls, first of all, there's 40 calls, not 52. You take vacations, we take vacations, you're going to miss calls. If we established it at 40, it's very doable. And the intensity is up to the receiver of the calls, okay? And the calls are 30 minutes per week. And then, of course, there's vacation in between.
And I'll say that, I coach directly with Mike, which, I've already sang songs about how great it's been. Our VP, Corey, who is going to come up next, he also is the front on Sweet Assist, which we're going to talk about, coaches with one of Mike's coaches. And I'll tell you that the coaching that he gets and the way that it's just changed Corey as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a recruiter, has been instrumental. So definitely, if you're interested, make sure you reach out to Mike. Again, it's mike.ferry@mikeferry.com. In the other group, I have a question, which is to grow per person production, how many group calls or training calls should we be scheduling a week?
Well, I think that the group calls you could do 2 or 3 if you're doing small groups of 5 to 7. But remember, they're really training, not coaching, because anytime you have a group together, because you're in mastermind groups, Sam, and a couple of your groups are very active, but you put 10, 12 people on a call, 5 are never going to participate. You're not even going to know they're there. 3 are going to make all the noise because the expressors make all the noise. And then you're going to have 2 or 3 that are kind of between. So I would say you're better off doing a group training / coaching call with max 4 to 5 people and try to get people that are within the same boundaries of productivity. And you should probably be doing it at least a couple times a week. The biggest challenge today with all the major franchises, the overabundance of what I call zooming people out of the business calls. I mean, we have one company that we do a lot of work with. They're doing 14 Zoom calls a day for their salespeople, and nobody's showing up. But so I would say less with more intensity is better than more and frequency. Less
awesome. Another question is, do you offer recruiting coaching or training?
Yes, we have very specific recruiting coaching. Okay, we have divided our coaches into categories: top agents, team training, brand new agents, broker owner training, recruiting training and coaching. We break it into categories based on the different coaches and the needs.
Okay.
The big thing today, of course, is talking to people about their teams and how do we help the team leaders develop the team. Because most team leaders are trying to find a way not to work and get paid. Okay.
Yeah, just like brokers.
Yeah.
One more question. Do you coach brokers differently based on area? My biggest concern with coaching is that some of the coaches based out in the Midwest come from a different market than a metro city like New York or LA.
Well, there's no question that we do a simple questionnaire when a person says, I want to be in coaching, and we ask about 30 questions. And my wife, Sabina, and I go through every one of those questionnaires before we assign a coach. And of course, I have a little advantage. I've been doing this for 46 years. So I have a pretty good understanding of North America as well as the European and Russian markets now. So, it would be highly unlikely that we would assign a coach, for example, from Indiana to somebody in Manhattan. I mean, if that happens, it's a mistake and we would correct it quickly. So we have to be very market aware.
Awesome. All right. Well, that was a great session. If I'm missing any questions from the other group, let me know and I'll make sure that I get the answer for you personally from Mike, or you can connect with him at mike.ferry@mikeferry.com. Mike, any closing thoughts?
Well, first of all, thank you, Sam. I'm really glad this worked out for you and all the broker managers involved. As you know, I'm skeptical a lot of times on this type of an event, but I think you did a great job promoting it, and hats off to you. And keep up the good work, and I'll, of course, talk to you. We won't talk next Monday because it's a holiday. We'll talk on Tuesday next week.
Looking forward to it, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll see you next time. Again, everyone, make sure you reach out to him directly if you have any questions, or if there's anything that we can do, let us know. Thank you again, Mike. Really appreciate you.
All right.